You're good to go? Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Thank you all for taking your time out to join us this evening. I know that there's some guests still to come in, so there might be a flow of guests hopefully coming in. So this is our now 5th year as a Sikh Press Association. We're going to, if you haven't been to our annual review before, we're going to go through a lot of the projects that we've been handling this year, how things have progressed and changed from previous years, and then look forward to what we're hopefully planning to carry out for the following year. There will be a number of speakers joining us here, and the majority of the review will be done by Sikh and Jasveer Singh. As most of you already know, the Sikh Press Association is an arm that falls under the umbrella of Everything's 13 as a charity. So they're obviously very, in my opinion, excellent in what they do. And I think one of the things that you will see today is the kind of growth that we've had and the ways that we've had to prove ourselves and prove our existence to the larger community. I think when we first set up the Sikh Press Association, there were a lot of challenges because we had lots of people questioning the need for such an association, and a lot of people had really questioned why we need something like this if other community groups have it. We already have a lot of organisations already in place that possibly could have done some of the things that the Sikh PA did. So hopefully in this presentation you'll see again how we've grown to prove our worth. Our aims have always remained the same. They're up here for you guys to read. There's 3 key things that we've always maintained. One was to raise the public profile of Sikhs, Sikh organisations, Sikh activities, Sikh faith events across mainstream media. So where there were misrepresentations or even inaccuracies within mainstream media that affected the Sikh community directly. Outside of that, it was also our aim to just generally lift the profile of Sikhs within the UK. So, I mean, even basic things like giving the mainstream media information about Sikhs that wear turbans. Why is that different? How does that kind of fit in with, well, very unfortunately, but with Islamophobia, things like that. So just lifting the visual profile of Sikhs. Empowering the Sikhs by developing skills. Our intention was to always empower Sikh individuals and groups with media skills so they can then use those skills and generate their own publicity. They're all free, by the way.
Oh, how do you know about that? I've never heard of that.
If you signed up to any of our social media channels, we do send information out regularly about, and they're all around the country as well.
So you have them coming up as well?
When they're coming up, they will be posted on social media. But you can leave your details and we'll get that out to you. And then finally, one of the key things that we've been building up for a long time is a bank of resources for mainstream media. One of the big problems that we found previously was if there was any representation needed within mainstream media for a Sikh news story or they needed a spokesperson, there was never, a subbed list of articulate speakers or like an official bank of statistical information that was readily available and credible, really. So that was another key thing that we still do. Who is Sikh PA? My picture is on there. It's run by these 2 guys here. They do the horse's share of the work. That's Sikh and Jasveer. This information is in the packs that you have already. So Jasveer has been with us again for 5 years, senior press officer, and Sikh also there. I co-founded the organisation with Jagraj. This obviously everybody knows Jagraj, and this information is in your packs. This was a vision that he had well ahead of the times, really, and I know that he spoke to lots of people about putting something together to represent the Sangat and represent their voice uniformly to the mainstream media. And I remember initially, when he came to me with the idea, I said, "Oh, I really don't think this is going to work because we've got so much work to do, and how are we going to form this?" And you know, he was obviously from a very Sikh background, and I completely wasn't. But it'd be great for him to kind of really see how far the organisation has grown, and also how much support we do have from the other side now, from all of you guys. So we also together planned. We have an advisory board. This is looked at every year. The role of the advisory board is really to kind of make sure that we are impartial in all of our quests as a press association. That means being impartial with all the organisations that we do work with. Everyone on here has a special, a key skill that they bring to the table, and the discussions that we have aren't all, you know, not everyone's singing off the same hymn sheet. So it's really good to kind of keep that energy there to show that we remain focused on exactly what we're meant to deliver. And that's it. I'll pass it on to Jasveer, who's going to take over, and Sukh. There you go.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Just to repeat, thank you all for coming. I have heard there's delays on the central line, so there probably will be people still coming through. Rather than me stand here and go through slide after slide to show you some of the things that we've done, we've got a very short video that we'd like to play now, and have a look for yourselves.
It's part of our religion to keep our hair. It's part of the 5Ks, and shaving was obviously, it wasn't ideal. It wasn't something that I wanted to do, but I had to do it to abide by the rules. And if I wanted to box, which I did, I had to do it. And so it was a choice that I had to make, but it wasn't really a choice that I wanted to make.
Yeah, it's true, and it actually affects your lifestyle, because boxing is a lifestyle, and you put it into your lifestyle. So the people who may have not had the opportunity I have now due to like CPA.
Free drinks were handed out by the Sikh community in Handsworth to recognise Chabil Day. The sweet non-alcoholic drink of rose water, syrup, ice and milk is served all over the world in celebration of this special day in the Sikh calendar.
Very well, welcome to the programme. So just tell us about Chabil Day.
Well, Chabil Day is a commemoration of the martyrdom of the fifth Guru. So Sikhs throughout the world are actually handing out sort of cold drink, cold refreshments, ice creams, ice lollies and stuff, just to commemorate that day.
Just remind us again, son, the kind of work that you did and the kind of work that you continue to do.
Yeah, so, the United Sikhs as an organisation, we provide humanitarian aid across the globe for, natural disasters and man-made disasters, and, our objective is to save lives.
7 is when I started being conscious of my body hair. I was in ballet, and there was this girl in my class who pointed out the hair on my arms, And she was just like, wow, you are so hairy. And I was 7 years old.
I can relate to that.
And I was like, wow, I have hair on my arms. And I realized it in that moment that I was different and it wasn't okay for me to be different.
Actually, my last year of public school, I transferred out of my private Christian school, not for reasons related to religion, but other reasons. And I came into contact to this girl who I'm with till today. And I discovered that Sikhism was a thing through her because she is Punjabi and she's Sikh and stuff.
So, yeah, you could talk about that, but like they just said as well, that they have wheelchairs available when you come inside, which are clean, that you can take inside of the Darbar. So I don't think that's really an issue when it comes to the wheelchair itself.
Well, we've been in the UK, working in the UK, for the last 5 years, but essentially this policy that we're launching today is really to tackle the issues that we find exist. So, for example, most women that we've spoken to will have used toilet paper in between buying menstrual products.
We had a program every morning and every evening. There would be singing of hymns, and there will be discourse of certain hymns which relate to death. It was all in English, the discourse was in English, so it was very easy to relate to. And for me personally, it was like counseling, because it was the Guru would talk to me through these words. At that time, it was really, really comforting, and it was just amazing having this.
Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
What's the role of the gurus, like as regards your Sikhism? What role do they hold, and is it any divine role they play?
Yes, very much so. So Bhai Gurdas Ji, which was an eminent scholar around the time of the fifth Guru. In the Sikh faith, we have 11 Gurus. Bhai Gurdas Ji writes very beautifully. They say, "Suni Pukar Data Prabh Gun Jag Mahi Bataya." They say that the whole world was crying out in pain because there was a lot of ignorance. And the way that the Guru describes is that in the midst of all of that darkness, God, hearing the cries of the world in suffering and pain and falsehood, in answering to those prayers, that God came forth in the form of Guru Nanak himself.
There's millions of people around the world, and we're representing those in Europe, UK, America. We've got really strong togetherness here. It's just like a family. It doesn't matter if you're Hindu, if you're Muslim, if you're Sikh.
Valentine's Day often focuses on couples, but a Calgary group did its part today, spreading love to all strangers. And if you were downtown this afternoon, you may have seen the results. Alicia Philbrook reports.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So hopefully you enjoyed that video. It was just a snippet, you could say, of a lot of the coverage that we with Maharaja's Kirpa secured this year. As you know, we can only work with the support of the Sangat, and the Sangat is absolutely crucial to everything we do. Whichever event you go to, wherever it is in the country, a face that you're very likely to see is that of Jaspreet Singh sat here. He is somebody that when I think of the phrase Chardi Kala, he is somebody that comes to mind. He's always smiling, always bubbly, always willing to work and to engage, and hopefully he's going to now share some thoughts with you about his interaction with Sikh PA over the past year and beyond.
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ ਸੁਖਪਾ ਜੀ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਚੰਗੇ ਬੋਲੇ ਪਰ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਦੀ ਵਡਿਆਈ ਆ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪ ਤਾਂ ਕੁਛ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੇ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਇਸ ਤੇ ਲਵ ਇਸ ਤੇ ਬਲੇਸਿੰਗਸ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਕਹ ਲੋ ਨਿਮਾਣਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਮਾਣ ਨਿਤਾਣਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਤਾਣ ਨਿਓਟਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਓਟ ਸ਼ੁਕਰ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਨੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਪਿਆਰ ਬਖਸ਼ਿਆ nothing before I go on I just want to remember Bhai Jagraj Singh ji and when I came from Punjab 5 years ago ਮੈਨੂੰ ਹਜੇ ਵੀ ਯਾਦ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਇੱਕ ਮੈਂ ਦੇਖੀ ਸੀਗੀ ਤੇ ਬੜੇ ਮਨ ਨੂੰ ਲੱਗੀ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸੀਗੇ ਉਹ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਪਏ ਸੀਗੇ ਕਿ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਡਾਰਕਨੈਸ ਕਿ ਅੱਜ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਦੇ ਨੌਜਵਾਨ ਅਸੀਂ ਚਿੰਤਿਤ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਹਾਂ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਿਹੜੀ ਦਿਸ਼ਾ ਨੂੰ ਗੁਰੂ ਪੰਥ ਦੀ ਸੇਵਾ ਕਰੀਏ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਅੱਗੇ ਜਾਈਏ ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਬੜੀ ਸੋਹਣੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਹੀ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਇਟ ਕਾਈਂਡ ਆਫ ਲਿੰਕਸ ਵਿਦ ਸ਼ਹੀਦ ਭਾਈ ਜਸਵੰਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਖਾਲੜਾ ਐਸਾ ਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਡਾਰਕਨੈਸ ਹੋਵੇ ਤਾਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਦੀਵਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਹਿੰਮਤ ਕਰਕੇ ਗੁਰੂ ਦਾ ਓਟ ਆਸਰਾ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਸਿਰ ਚੱਕਣੇ ਹੀ ਪੈਣੇ ਆ ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆਸੇ ਪਾਸੇ ਸਾਡੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇਗਨੋਰੈਂਸ ਡਾਰਕਨੈਸ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਚੇਂਜ ਕਰ ਸਕੀਏ ਸ਼ੁਕਰ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ I feel really blessed. Came to this country 5 years ago. Student and thanks to British Organisation of Sikh Students we had Birmingham City University Sikh Society so that kind of acted as a family for myself and Shukr Vaheguru da what I am today is only because of their love and their pyar but I feel really blessed Shukr Vaheguru da been given this opportunity thank you so much and so it was really interesting coming from Punjab trying to navigate different places khas karke jidde different cheezan de naal tusi interact ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ so it was very hard but thanks to Vaheguru when I came on the first day I saw a picture of Shaheed Bhai Amrik Singh ji with son Janel Singh ji Khalsa and it was very motivating because someone told me a story how as a student they were the right arm of son Janel Singh ji Khalsa Pindramwale so for me they are my really good role models but hopefully Maharaj di kirpa ਨਾਲ ਅਸੀਂ ਵੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਵਾਂਗੂ ਗੁਰੂ ਪੰਥ ਦੀ ਸੇਵਾ ਕਰੀਏ so bit by bit I started getting involved it was really hard to navigate spaces but thanks to my guru thanks to the Amrit Didat which helped me a lot to get through it and with Maharaj's kirpa I was elected as a first Sikh and international student president of my university students union 2 years ago so I was really thankful to Vaheguru and interestingly when you reach these positions how shall I say which you dream of but when you get there you realize how hollow these things are and spiritually like how it's hard spiritually you feel very isolated so then I did ardas before Maharaj and got touch with Sikh PA and I was like there's a story for you guys first Sikh international student president who got elected and they shared my story interestingly in September when the academic year was about to start so someone from Punjab texted me and said Jaspreet teri news lagi hai so it was all over Punjab in different newspapers and I feel really blessed nothing but we need to realize when youngsters are growing up they have their moments when they interact with Guru Panth and for me that was very important when I shared my story and with Maharaj's kirpa it got shared everywhere because when you reach those positions you realize actually it's not about you but it's how you can actually motivate and help others who may want to navigate these same spaces as well and I feel really blessed since then we got 2 Gursikhs who have been running for presidential positions within the universities so thank you so much for kind of like spreading the story throughout the world. It got shared everywhere. And another way in which I interacted was, so I wasn't allowed to enter the US Embassy with my kirpan last year. And so it was really interesting. I went there, they harassed me a lot, so I wasn't able to get there. So through Sikh PA, they advocated for my case and they updated on Twitter and everywhere, then actually requested the US Embassy to get back to them as well. And I think it's really important because sometimes when you feel like there's no one standing up for you, but social media and the power of media is really important. And Shukr Vaheguru that yesterday I went to US Embassy again, but we informed them beforehand and I was allowed with my kirpan in. So, and another important thing, so I've interacted with Sikh's PA on different occasions as well. And for example, they arranged my interview when I got elected as president with West Midlands Masala show on West Midlands BBC Radio. Then I was on Sunny and Shay's show as well. Then I was on like different BBC like shows as well. And so it was really interesting. And I think the interview I had with West Midlands Masala when I got elected as president, it provided me the confidence. And I think being a youngster, you think these news spaces are quite far away and you can't reach them, and what you do is you just consume these old things. And thanks to Vaheguru, we've got organizations like Sikh PA who actually helps us to reach these channels, helps us to reach different ways. And now they don't seem like far away, but they seem actually young people like myself we can interact with. And other things, for example, during Go Back Modi protest, I had an interview with BBC Asian Network. Then recently I was supposed to be on Jallianwala Bagh show on BBC4 as well, but thanks to Sikh PA I wasn't able to go there, and they arranged someone else to be on the show. So it's important, the network of good Sikhs, the speakers we've got around, and if the opportunity arises, we can actually go to a space where it can be given to someone else. So it gave me kind of like more and more confidence. And I think the other one, this point is very personal to me. So in universities, when you become head of a political organization and you start advocating your sovereignty, your how shall I say, Sikh values, and start standing for other people, and the first thing you see, the structures or the things around yourself start criminalizing you. So it was very hard in my university. So I spoke against British Empire and quite loads of stuff. So I was questioned about having photo of Sant Jarnail Singh Ji next to my desk, and they questioned me about my kirpan as well. So I went to a big university meeting. They were like, "Why are you wearing it outside?" And I'm like, "Why should I wear it inside?" So they questioned me a lot, and they said, "What will happen if we say that you should put it inside?" And I was like, "You will see what will happen then." But I think it's just the moral support to young Sikh activists, which is very important, because the fact is we shouldn't be afraid to talk about our shaheeds. We shouldn't be afraid to talk about Khalistan Sangharsh. But it's a blessing to have actually network and organization where we can actually present our side rather than get salated by the media, which the narratives are already prevailing. So I think morally, especially for youngsters, for young students like myself, so it was really important. So another thing, I work with loads of interfaith organizations as well. For example, Three Faiths Forum, I was on their parliamentist program, where we go to parliament, work with local MPs, etc. But blessing, how shall I say, it's a great blessing. Then when you work with organizations, you refer different organizations, and it's so great, like everything Tera, Base of Sikhi, Sikh PA, have been working with them for quite a long time. So it shows how credible and how good the organizations are. And ਅਖੀਰ ਤੇ ਬਸ ਮੈਂ ਆਹੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦਾ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਗੁਰੂ ਪੰਥ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿੰਨੀਆਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਸੈਲੀਬ੍ਰੇਟ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਅੱਗੇ ਹਾਈਲਾਈਟ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਖਾਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਨੌਜਵਾਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਲਈ, ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਆਉਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਸਮੇਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੋਟੀਵੇਟ ਹੋਣ। ਪਰ ਜੇ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਜਾਵੇ, ਜਦੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਤੋਂ ਆਇਆ ਸੀਗਾ, ਦ ਨੈਰੇਟਿਵਸ ਵਿਚ ਆਈ ਯੂਜ਼ਡ ਟੂ ਹੀਅਰ ਇਨ ਰੇਡੀਓ, ਜਦੋਂ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਕੋਕੋਨਟ ਇਸ਼ੂ ਜਿਹੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਸੀਗੇ, ਬਟ ਇਟਸ ਅ ਬਲੈਸਿੰਗ ਨਾਓ ਕਿ ਹੁਣ ਸੱਚ ਦੀ ਆਵਾਜ਼ ਅੱਗੇ ਬੁਲੰਦ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਪਈ ਆ। ਦੈਨ ਵੀ ਗੋਟ ਸਿੱਖ ਪ੍ਰੈਸ ਐਸੋਸੀਏਸ਼ਨ ਵਿਚ ਹੈਲਪਸ ਟੂ ਪੁੱਟ ਦੋਜ਼ ਨੈਰੇਟਿਵਸ ਆਊਟ। ਸੋ ਖੁਸ਼ੀ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਆ। ਪਰ ਮੈਂ ਆ ਵੀ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਚਾਹੂੰਗਾ ਕਿ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਆਰਗੇਨਾਈਜੇਸ਼ਨਸ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਆ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਰੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਬ੍ਰਿਟਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ, ਖਾਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਬਾਹਰਲੇ ਮੁਲਕਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਦ ਆਰਗੇਨਾਈਜੇਸ਼ਨ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਟਾਰਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ, ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਦੀ ਕਿਰਪਾ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਇਹ ਤਾਂ ਹਲੇ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੀ ਆ। ਹਲੇ ਹੋਰ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਦੀ ਕਿਰਪਾ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਇਹ ਗੁਰੂ ਪੰਥ ਦੇ ਇੱਕ ਸਮਾਂ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਦੇ ਆਊਗਾ, ਰੀੜ੍ਹ ਦੀਆਂ ਹੱਡੀਆਂ ਹੋਊਗੀਆਂ ਜਦੋਂ ਗੁਰੂ ਪੰਥ ਨੂੰ ਲੋੜ ਪਊਗੀ। ਸੋ ਖਾਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਆਹੀ ਆ ਕਿ ਵੱਧ ਤੋਂ ਵੱਧ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੁਰੂ ਪੰਥ ਦੀ ਸੇਵਾ ਕਰੀਏ, ਗੁਰੂ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਦੇ ਬਾਣੀ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜੀਏ, ਐਂਡ ਖਾਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਡਰੀਏ ਨਾ ਸੱਚ ਬੋਲਣ ਤੋਂ। ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਨੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਹੀ ਕਿਹਾ ਜੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਸੱਚ ਬੋਲਾਂਗੇ ਤੇ ਕੀ ਹੋਊਗਾ ਬਸ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਤਾਂ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਦੀ ਸੇਵਾ ਕਰਨੀ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਤੇ ਡਰੀਏ ਨਾ ਸੱਚ ਬੋਲਣ ਤੋਂ ਸਾਡਾ ਸੱਚ ਸੁਣਨ ਨੂੰ ਤਾਂ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਤਰਸਦੀ ਪਈ ਆ ਪਰ ਇਹੀ ਗੱਲ ਆ ਕਿ ਬਾਣੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਅੰਦਰ ਵਸਾਈਏ ਤੇ ਕੁਛ ਨਾ ਕੁਛ ਕਰੀਏ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਦੀ ਕਿਰਪਾ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਤੇ ਡਰੀਏ ਨਾ ਪਰ ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਸੋ ਮਚ ਸ਼ੁਕਰ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਦਾ ਜੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ
So one of the biggest stories we worked on this year was the attack on the Gurdwara Sahib in Edinburgh in August of last year. And I just want to take a few moments to actually talk about this because I think it's a very good illustration of what we do and it's a very good illustration of the value that we can have for the Bandh. As people know, the attack actually happened in the early hours of the morning at the Gurdwara Sahib, and I found out about it probably about 7:30 a.m. When I was getting up. People already started talking about it in Sangat in Scotland. By 8 o'clock, we had talked to people in the Sangat in Edinburgh. So we have a contact through basics of Sikhi, Gulab Singh. I was managed to get him on the phone. Less than an hour later, we actually had the article up on our website. So this was about 9:30 a.m. We had the article up on the Sikh PA website saying that Gurdwara Sahib had been attacked. This is when I started getting phone calls. So Jasveer Singh was actually in Canada at this point. And I started getting phone calls and realised quite early on that we had to make a 10 a.m. deadline if we wanted to get it on the lunchtime news. And if you get something on the lunchtime news, then you're more likely to get it on the evening news. So this is something where we really only had about an hour or so to get together, to get the facts and to present them to media. So I phoned the BBC straight away and I said, this is what we know so far. Established a contact there and said, I want contact to be just between us two so stuff doesn't get muddled in terms of me talking to loads of journalists at the BBC, and managed to be that conduit between the Sangat, who is obviously very busy and actually quite distraught dealing with their Gurdwara Sahib, but still feeding updates back to the media. So that's what we did. And by 11:20 a.m. that day, there was an article on BBC News Scotland. A few minutes later, there was an article on the Edinburgh News website, and it said that a 17-year-old had been arrested in connection with the attack. And this is something that I hadn't heard. I had established a police contact by this time as well. I hadn't heard it from them. Within 5 minutes, I was on the phone to the Edinburgh News. I said, you don't have a source for this because I don't have a source for this. And I asked them to take it down and they did. And it's things like this, when there is an attack, especially on Gurdwara Sahib, we see this when there are attacks on minority communities, the fake news that comes, people start spreading rumours, people want to say this and that. And the Sanghas are so busy dealing with their Gurdwara Sahib that they're not the ones trawling through social media, they're not the ones trawling through the media, checking the facts on media. But that's where we come in. That's our role and that's our job. And that's what we were doing that day. So I contacted Police Scotland, I got a confirmation as well. And this was all very, very fast. This was all sort of on the phone. You say straight away, okay, I need an email to back this up just as a bit of proof. And we got that. We also managed to get sort of pictures through quite quickly. Again, from Gulab Singh up in Edinburgh, we managed to get pictures so that we sent them to Huffington Post again before lunchtime. We had pictures up. Once you get pictures online, then it makes it easier for other news organisations to cover that as well. So all of this was about, if we're slow off the mark, then it's going to be in the evening news and we're going to wonder why it hasn't really been covered properly. But the fact is that we managed to get it on the lunchtime news in Scotland, which meant that it was a segue, it was a natural segue for it to be covered later on. Something that also happened was that because we had established a contact with the police, when the police did finally give updates, such as, when they did finally arrest somebody, we got it. And we were able to put it out on our social media. So we again were reducing that time between Sangat knowing the correct information, the official information, and we were also just monitoring online as well to make sure that if there was something that we hadn't heard of before, we could establish whether it was a rumour or whether it was a fact and make that clear. For example, that evening there were some people saying that different fundraising pages have been set up. This is very natural in a time like this, that people will say that. And we were managed to establish again with our contact gloves in Edinburgh that this wasn't the case, and managed to let media know proactively that this wasn't the case, so that they didn't then put it in their news article, which would go around. And once it's in a news article, it's so much harder to disprove, it's so much harder to roll back. So I think this is an example of where having full-time press officers really does help the Panth. You know, Seva is of the utmost respect, but there are times when, you know, people obviously had jobs to go to. The immediate Sangat were very busy dealing with the police. They were dealing with cleaning the Gurdwara Sahib up. They were dealing with the sort of on-the-ground stuff. And we were there able to provide that service. A very similar service, in fact, to the one we provided after the Grenfell Tower fire as well. So this was along the same lines, and because we had experience in the Grenfell Tower fire, which was, you know, arguably a much sort of bigger event with much more sort of wider media ramifications, we were well trained and we had that practical experience. In the Grenfell Tower fire case, Jasveer Singh was in the office and I was on the ground, and so we had a very good setup whereby we could talk to each other. This happened when Jasveer Singh was in Canada for a couple of months, so it was just me on my own. And so again, it's about, it made it a little bit harder, but it is better that we had somebody there to really shape the news in the way that it did. It's so much easier for them, especially with these regional news articles. This is how they start. So if you look at the top there, you'll see comes under Edinburgh, Fife and East. The story will be under the regional news first, and then throughout the day it actually makes the main Scottish news, and then if it gets even bigger it will make the UK news. And this is how these things progress, and if we're not there at the beginning sort of pushing it up the agenda, then there's very little chance that it will do that organically. And quite frankly, with something like this, with something as heinous as this, we don't want to take that risk and leave it to chance. So that's just a case study that we wanted to tell you about.
So just moving on to a few other stories that are a bit different than the general kind of positive news coverage we gained. There was quite a big bit of coverage that we worked with the BBC on, a big news story which was related to the Qurban and the ongoing issues that the Sikh community faces with the Qurban. That got a lot of mixed reaction, especially because it's fair to say the general British public reacted to the news that, you know, Sikhs wear a small sword or you know, carry a weapon, if you will, in a way that kind of, you know, a lot of us expected, and a lot of them weren't too happy about it, which was evident from the comments on social media. So why did this news come about? How did we work on it? Very basically, we have regular contact with the BBC and specifically the heads of religion and ethics at the BBC, and they're always inquiring as to what's going on within the community and what are groups doing within the Sikh community that are kind of public interest. And this was around the time where and there still is at this point actually, a lot of discussion going on about rights for the Qurban to be worn and being actually embedded into UK law. And they saw this and they thought this is something that we want to discuss, and as such this is something that we worked with them on to provide kind of case studies, provide interviews, provide them access into Gurdwaras where they could kind of get pictures of Sikhs wearing Qurbans of all different kinds, as is common. Most people that, you know, are within Sangat know. So with this, we'd be happy to kind of hear your feedback on it if you have any questions about it. But it was one example of a long-term kind of news story that we worked on with the BBC that did get a mixed reaction. Moving forward, one story that is an absolute top priority for us and has been for just under 18 months now is the case of Jagtar Singh Johal. The Free Jaggi Now campaign, if you will. So this is a priority for us because it really encapsulates an ongoing issue that a lot of the Sikh community have been vocal about for decades, and that's the treatment of Sikhs in India, especially those that are kind of politically vocal or activists like Jagtar is. So this is something that we've worked on loads. Last year, at this time last year, when we talked about our work on the Free Jaggi Now campaign, we had approximately 24,000 words written of updates on his case. We're now at 41,000, all on our website, sikhpa.com/freejagginow. What we've also done is every time there's an event, whether it's a protest or a parliament event, we make sure that one of us is there to give direct feedback straight away, straight after the event, to the Scottish media, who are always on top of this, and also to the national media, who we're constantly pushing into covering this. We hopefully are working on something now with one of the mainstream newspapers that should be coming out in the near future as well on this topic specifically. We do work directly with the organisations that are supporting the Free Jaggi Now campaign, namely the Sikh Federation and Jagdar's family, to get regular updates and an understanding of the case. This includes kind of going to Birmingham to help with a workshop about how the Sangat can support the Free Jaggi Now campaign, working directly with Jaggi's brother, Gurpreet Singh. And what we also do is go out of our way to seek out quotes that we can make a news story out of about the Jaggi campaign, because sadly the case of Jaggi's right now is being really drawn out, and it becomes harder and harder to find something new, something relevant. Every other trial hearing is case delayed, case deferred. So the media, when they're looking for updates from this, it's hard to find them. So what we've done, when we've gone to certain events where there might be like MPs, for example, we make sure we interview them and ask them about Jaggi's case. And we've done that with MPs including Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, John McDonnell, the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, Conservative MP Ed Hughes, and many others. And so that's just a few of the ways that we work on the Jaggi campaign. One thing I do want to say about working on it, which I'm sure our friends, some of them from the Sikh Federation are here, will agree on, and definitely the family will recognise, is that it's really taxing work, it's draining, it's frustrating, it's upsetting that such a serious situation, that one of our own is in India right now, has been tortured, is still living daily with abuse in his position in jail, and it's really hard to find a light at the end of the tunnel, and it is quite taxing. And it's something that kind of, I think should be discussed regarding this case. And it's made a lot of people afraid to actually go to India. And, when we have these kind of thoughts about how these things can be mentally taxing and have an impact on our own mental health, if you will, that leads me now into our next speaker, who has himself provided a brilliant platform that's actually really kind of revolutionized a lot of internal dialogue within the Punjabi Sikh community. And I'll let him explain a bit more about how we've worked together. And this is Sharanjit Singh, the founder of Tarakki.
Yeah, perfect. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So my name's Sharanjit Singh, and I'm the founder and director of Tarakki. And Tarakki is a movement that wants to change how Punjabi communities approach mental health. We do and kind of manage a number of grassroots projects where we try to develop awareness, education and support across the UK in Punjabi communities. My day has probably stemmed 2.5, 3 years. It started first of all at a personal interest level, kind of observing what the organisation was doing and how they were functioning within Sikh communities in the UK. And since starting Tarakki in October 2017, my engagement with them has been more substantive. I've actually kind of spoken with them about Tarakki's work and actually connected in a way that I wasn't connecting with them before. And in that sense, this talk will be structured in 2 rough parts. The first part will be my more general observations about what Sikh PA contribute towards Sikh communities in the UK. And the second will be about my specific experiences through Tarakki. But first, a brief word on media. We are living in an increasingly globalized society where information can spread in seconds. And this isn't neutral. Information is designed to help people create opinion, to help people create understandings and interpretations of things that are happening around the world. And this opinion, again, isn't neutral. We view things in certain ways, and we view these things from a variety of factors and variety of things that we interact with. And media is a key way in which we form these types of opinions. And again, looking more closely, digital media and news media has historically been a really important way in which people try and get objective and reliable information. And I remember when I came across this quote when I was studying at uni, and it kind of immediately linked in with my interactions with Sikh PA. And I thought, wow, okay, this is why it matters. This is fundamentally why this type of work is so important. So I'm first going to just look over 3 rough concepts to try and think about why the work that Sikh PA does is so important to the Sikh Panth. First of all, as Sikh communities in the UK, we have to ask ourselves the question, do we want our narratives written by us, or do we want them written for us? This is the fundamental question at the heart of Sikh communities in the UK and our engagement with wider society. Fundamentally, what I see Sikh PA's work as doing is providing Sikh communities and Sikh individuals with a sense of agency over how our narrative is conveyed in wider society. Without Sikh PA, our narratives might be shaped by people completely unrelated to Sikh communities, people who might not necessarily have had much interaction with Sikhs, or people who might not really have much of a knowledge of Sikhi. And so fundamentally, the work that Sikh PA does is trying to reclaim a sense of agency for Sikh communities in the UK. And second, moving on to ownership. With agency, after you've had kind of agency for a while, you actually start developing a sense of ownership for the narratives that we're kind of putting forward. And what I see in Sikh PA's work is that we're actually developing a sense of our opinions are important and our opinions are valued within wider society. And it's not just saying, here, you can speak to this person, or putting someone in touch with different types of media, but it's also saying that your opinion is valued, your opinion is important, and your opinion has a place within wider Sikh communities. And finally, just looking at them in a sense of autonomy as well. It's so important for communities who aren't necessarily represented in mainstream society to have a sense of autonomy when engaging with media and when engaging with wider society. And one of the things I see which is so important in Sikh PA's work is that it is fresh and dynamic. And you can see by all the people speaking here today that we're talking about topics that are very, very current. We're talking about topics that are still different from last year's topics, and it shows how much has happened in the last year and how much Sikh PA have had their finger on the pulse and have actually empowered individuals who are doing this kind of work to take this sense of agency, to take this sense of ownership, and to actually be able to speak at these kinds of platforms as well. Another small part I wanted to talk about with regards to Sikh PA's work is something that I think is incredibly important in our world nowadays. You see so many more young people within Sikh communities who are doing such impactful work within wider society, working in Punjabi communities, Sikh communities, non-Sikh communities, everywhere. And it's essential for people who are doing this kind of work to actually have a sense of how to speak with the media and a sense for how to navigate what can be a very, very deceiving media landscape. And with my work with Taraqi, I probably get 1 email, 1 call a week of someone who's either doing a thesis, someone who's either doing a dissertation, someone who's writing an article, someone who's trying to get thoughts and opinions on things. And I know that these people talking to me aren't always coming from a neutral position. And we need to be aware of how we're asking questions, how we're asked questions, how we respond to questions. And usually this kind of thing is, not everyone gets this kind of training. And I think moving forward, this kind of stuff is going to be more and more important because we can't rely on 1 or 2 people to talk about things everywhere. We need to spread this load, and we need to be able to say that we have people who are skilled at engaging with media in different places, with different skill sets, within Sikh communities around the country. And I mean, for me, I went on it was a TV debate, and I remember the presenter was sat there and he was talking to me about, why Sikh communities, why Punjabi communities don't engage with mental health services. And he put two things forward to me. He said, is it because of, the stigma that exists in the community, or is it because they don't want to engage with healthcare services? And both of those victimize Punjabi communities. Both answers would be negative when talking about Punjabi communities. And so at that point, I kind of noticed in my head that he was doing this. And it's so important to actually say, well, actually, there are other reasons that exist. People might be put off healthcare services from their experience of racism, their experience of various kinds of discrimination within these services themselves. And again, this is because journalists don't come at things from a neutral standpoint. And we need to be aware of things that will kind of, be possible obstacles when we're talking with, media more generally. Well, and just a final point on this, I think it's really important to outline the fact that these things are free, because this isn't just saying, oh, cool, we're charging, £75 a head and you can come and get this media and skills training. But this is making this open to absolutely anyone, regardless of their, say, socioeconomic background, regardless of their kind of their background, where they're coming from. And I think that's a really key part of this, because this personally is in line with very much democratizing the knowledge that we all have as a bond here in the UK. So now I'm just going to kind of go on to the engagements that we've had with the Sikh Press Association through our work with Taraqi, and I'll focus on a few of the little projects that we do. And I think this is pretty cool, because it kind of goes away from what everyone think the Sikh PA does normally. And we've kind of discussed the really front-facing media engagement, the really front-facing, kind of very hands-on deck, phones on ears kind of thing. But this kind of work that we've been doing with Sikh PA is very much in the background and very much above and beyond the kind of work that we kind of think they do, which I think is quite special. So every month, Taraqi hold a Chai in the City forum for Punjabi men. And essentially, this is a forum where Punjabi men come and discuss a kind of arranged topic. And as you notice, there's no kind of mention of mental health in our on our promotional material. We want this to be strictly a forum where people can come and have a discussion away from their family, away from their friends, about a topic that they might not necessarily speak about. So we've had 6 of these so far, and the success of this has been we've had about 26 unique people who have come to these sessions, and we cap them at about 8 to 10 each time. And a lot of the time, we're having people come back to these sessions. And this one is actually happening upstairs. That's why I came in late. So this is happening right now. And one of the things around more than just a one-off is because of the support of Sikh PA. And this, something like a retweet or something like posting on Facebook, we might think it's trivial, but people see these things and they respond to things. And we've actually spoken with people and asked, okay, how did you find out about this? Was it Instagram, Facebook, Twitter? And they said, oh no, we saw it through Sikh PA. And so personally for me, that is a really, really touching way in which Sikh PA is working to connect people with initiatives, with different kinds of things that are happening, away from what might be immediately what we consider their work. And so this is happening, once every month. And one of the other things that has been really useful is Sikh PA have really helped with connecting us with possible venues. When we're trying to do one thing a month at different places in central London, the venue can be quite difficult to sort out. And this has been a really fantastic way in which we've actually been able to continue doing this. And we've thought, okay, cool, we've had one, this isn't going to be it. We can plan 3 or 4 more. And this again has been because of the help of Sikh PA.
Are you going to do more for Sikh women? Oh, okay.
It's all good. So this is a question we got, and for me being, sorry. So it'll be coming back up again. It's going to come. This is just the most recent one. So a question for me is, you're doing this for Punjabi men. How can we do one for Punjabi women? But being a Punjabi man myself, I wanted a team of Punjabi women to actually be putting these things together and actually taking ownership of this work, because there's no point me doing it. I'm happy putting people in a room and I'm happy kind of supporting them and getting something going themselves. And this is what's happened with our Punjabi Female Forum. And again, we have this once a month. We had the first one, as you can see, in April. So it only started, we had a scoping session. It's only started relatively recently. But
this is something that we'll be hopefully doing once a month. They're basically, the working group is just kind of getting to know each other and just, figuring out venues and where we're going to kind of take this forward. And basically, I want them to have ownership over it. And so I'm not saying go and do it now, do this for that day. I'm just letting them get on with it. Just make it a bit. I think it's going to be at the end of, judging by the conversation on the WhatsApp group, it's going to be at the end of May, but it will be on our social media when it's up, and we'll try and kind of get it out as best we can. But yeah, again with this, it's the same reason why Sikh PA have been so important and so integral to this work, because we're able to transfer what we've done with the male forum onto the female forum. We've been able to contact people, we've been able to talk to people who could be speakers, talk to people who want to be involved, and it's been really important in building this type of community. And I think this is a nice example of what goes above and beyond their usual what we perceive as their usual work. And then I'm going to really quickly just go over a couple of smaller case studies about the work that Sikh PA are doing behind the scenes. And so Thrive London is a kind of campaign that is run out of the Mayor's office, and it's a campaign that wants to better the mental well-being of all Londoners. And I remember seeing this campaign, I thought, okay, cool, this looks interesting. And they had a mental health and faith event, and I said to Suk, I said, Chalo, let's go. Let's see what it's about. And we went to this event kind of late 2018. But the main thing I thought out of this was that these people need to be connected with Sikh PA, because we know that there are difficulties. Organisations find it difficult to connect with Sikh communities, and that's not because we're difficult to connect with. It's because their networks don't necessarily expand into people who have these kinds of relationships with Sikhs. And so this is what we tried to do with Thrive London, and we put them in contact with Sikh PA, and they were really responsive, as you can imagine, and they were very, very welcoming. And what we tried to do is develop this kind of relationship. And this is above and beyond their normal work. Like, this is as well as all the media stuff that's happening, every 10 minutes, phones going off and whatnot. And I think it proves that, the work that Sikh PA do isn't just about connecting Sikhs and media, but it's about connecting Sikh communities with other things that are happening more broadly within the public sphere. And finally, I'm just going to talk a tiny bit about another thing that kind of works in this way, but it's related more to research, and it's related more to engagement of Sikh communities in research activities. So the GLAD study is, I think it's the world's largest study into the genetic links of anxiety and depression. And they contacted Taraqi and they said, oh, can you help us make some promotional materials? And we went and we helped them make some promotional materials. And then they, when we got there, they said, we haven't got a very representative sample of people within this research. And obviously when you're not having representative samples in research, that means you don't have representative samples in results. And something as big as this is something that will actually have an impact on, say, legislation, an impact on how we think about genetics and its relationship to mental health. And so what I did, I connected Benji, who was working with the GLAD study, with Sikh PA, and she's actually come and had a conversation with them and actually thought about how they can best connect within Sikh communities. Because it's not just having a voice in media. Media is not the only part of our kind of public sphere. It's not the only way we understand and kind of draw information and kind of develop our interpretations. But research is such an important one as well, and it's sometimes one that's overlooked. And I think that's been an incredibly important part of, not just how we're having conversations around mental health in a kind of, face-to-face, upstairs kind of venue, but we're having these conversations at multiple channels, and this has really been down to the work Sikh PA have contributed towards Taraqi as well. So, I'd personally just like to say a massive thanks to both Suk, Jazz, and everyone else involved in Sikh PA and everyone else who gives their time towards this kind of work, because I think it's insurmountably important, and it's only after we don't have something like that we look and say that was so important. And so we all have a collective responsibility as a Sangha to ensure that we are putting our resources and our time towards something like this. And this takes completely different forms. That's not me saying everyone has to do this or do that, but we should be aware of what Sikh PA are doing, and we should be able to speak to other people about what Sikh PA are doing. And as I've tried to outline today, their work goes above and beyond kind of what we think is just the normal media engagement. But if we've got relatives who are doing dissertations, theses on things related to Sikh communities, and they've got surveys and stuff like that,
Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you get in contact with Sikh PA about that? It might seem trivial, but this is connecting people. This is connecting Sikh communities in the UK with the various facets of our public life. And on that, I will finish. Thank you all very much. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Just going back now onto some of the more serious, if you will, stories that we've worked on through the year that require a bit more explanation about why we're working on them. So there was an incident last year, I believe in August, September time, where 5 Sikhs across the UK found their houses raided. After their houses were raided, property was confiscated from all of them, but there were no arrests made. And the incredible thing about this is details of those raids were found to make their way into Indian media. Indian media were quick to actually openly take quotes from Indian authorities saying that they're the ones who'd pressed the UK police, specifically the West Midlands police, into conducting these raids. And details of those raids, including pictures and names from ended up in Indian media. This, as you can imagine, is quite a strange and, if you will, kind of complex story, because it relates also to the Free Jaggi Now campaign. It's believed that those names of those that were raided was extracted from torture of Jagdar Singh Johal as he's detained in India. And the fact that no arrests were made, and there's nothing further to kind of add to the fact that these people were raided and property was confiscated, in the sense that that there's no impending charges or anything of these people, makes it seem really, really suspicious about why their houses were raided. So those involved came to the Sikh Press Association and said they need support in kind of putting out the real narrative, at least from their perspective and those involved in the Free Jaggi Now campaign, about why these raids were conducted and what this means for the Sikh community. We've been continually providing updates on this story, and it goes hand in hand with some incidents that a lot of you probably have seen, which has seen Sikh activists across the UK actually forcibly in place a ban on the police in being involved in Sikh events, at least in a kind of recruitment level or just kind of promotional level. While this can be kind of quite abrasive situations of conflict, at the end of the day, it's up to the Sikh Press Association to drag that story away from kind of these quite salacious images of people confronting police and attempting to remove them from Gurdwaras, to actually bring the story back down to the fact that this goes back to raids that were conducted against Sikh activists where no arrests were made, and that information from those raids made its way straight into Indian media, with Indian authorities actually boasting about the fact that they had, which is actually illegal, forced the West Midlands police to kind of go ahead with these raids. So this is one of the more serious stories that we've been working on, and we will be continually providing updates as the case goes on. Just to add to it as well, a well-recognised human rights lawyer, Gareth Pearce, herself said that there's a paper trail leading back to India. So this isn't something that we're working on without kind of much information other than suspicion. So there has been various other serious stories that we've worked on. You can see them here for yourself. Like, for example, in the bottom, it would be your right corner, the bomb against the Sikh community in Afghanistan, the conviction of Sajjan Kumar linked with the Sikh genocide in 1984, the case of Sikh activists being arrested for Facebook posts, which we're providing updates from via the Sikh Relief Sikh Organisation of Prisoner Welfare Project, and a few others. So these are some of the most serious stories that we've worked on through the year. But to continue talking about serious stories that we've worked on, away from the positive stuff that we kind of always aim to get in the media, I'll pass on to my colleague Sukna.
So as you can see with these stories, they are all very serious. In a lot of their cases, they're life and death whether it's alcoholism and the deaths associated with that, or the Sajjan Kumar story with genocide, or the 3 Singhs that were imprisoned for we don't know what really. And this is our challenge, to get these stories into the mainstream media and to get media to want to cover them, and for media to really understand what they're about. The problem is that a lot of journalists in the UK, they don't want to be led down this road of looking at the complexities of the Sikh relationship with India, with the Indian state. You know, a lot of them will say, oh, Sikhs, yeah, you're Indian and that's it. And to get into the complexities of Indian repression, or of the state of Sikh activists in India, that takes a lot of personal investment and time, usually building relationships with individual journalists, leading them through, referring to them not just to our website, but to other contacts. It's a very laborious process, and the journalists have got to know that they've got to get something out of it at the end of it. So it's a risk on their part as well, and it's something we're always engaged in. So this is really our focus. This is what we want to be talking about. On a really good day, this would be something like this would be on the front page of a national newspaper. In the past year, since our last annual review, there's only been one exclusive on a Sikh-related story on the front page of a national newspaper, and I'm going to make it a little bit interactive. Does anybody know what it was? Hanji? Was it the Queen's Guard? Yeah, it was. So we're looking at these stories, these very serious stories, and then actually it comes to dealing with the front page, and it's this. And again, Jasveer Singh was in Canada. This was just after the Edinburgh Gurdwara attack, actually. And we wake up, and the same thing happens. My phone's already flooded with messages. And this story comes up, and it comes absolutely out of nowhere. There's no indication the day before. It's very fair to say that it was a slow news day. I think Parliament was still in recess, and there's no Brexit stuff going on. Somebody's probably been paid to give the story to The Sun, and The Sun have said, yeah, this is a great story, whacking this on the front page. And this was on the front page, and look at how big the word Sikh is, and the photograph. And so I went into the office and I picked up a copy for myself, and there are copies of this saying in every single newsagent in the country. And for most people that week, whenever they see or hear of a Sikh, this is what they're going to see. This is what they're going to be referred to. And it's really a non-story. If you look inside, I'm not going to turn the inside pages because there's a few inappropriate pages, but if you look at the story inside, it's about 300 words of a story. It's a non-story. They've basically got 3 pictures, they've got 1 fact, and there was a sense of outrage, right? There was a sense of embarrassment, there was a sense of outrage, there was a sense of feeling sorry for this soldier as well, being put on the front page. And I did a little bit of investigating and found out that actually pretty much every single army regiment in the last 8 years has had a soldier dismissed for drugs, for Class A drugs as well. And when you look into the problem, actually there's a very deep structural problem of the mistreatment of soldiers in the army and their dependency on drugs. But The Sun hasn't done that. The Sun's just gone straight for this story. Basically, it's a Mickey-taking story, what they say in the industry. You know, they've just seen it. They know that it's going to cause a little bit of havoc in the community, and they put it on the front page. The thing that happened with us was there was no sole body that was going to respond. Ultimately, this concerns an individual. It concerns an individual, and it concerns a British institution, not any Sikh institution. And the individual in question obviously wasn't going to be talking to the press. He couldn't anyway because he was still in the army. So they're not allowed to talk to the media in that time if they don't have permission from their superiors. And what you get is this vacuum where, again, rumour, myth, his colleagues could have talked, off the record, so to speak, or without the permission of their superiors. And we were very clear, and we were very conscious that what we had to do was provide facts to contextualize this, but also to demonstrate to the Sun that we're not going to take this sort of story lying down. You know, this sort of messing with our community by putting this on the front page isn't going to work anymore. And what we did is we drafted a statement in response from Sikh PA. And we said, there's a British citizen detained in India that's been tortured, and you haven't even covered it, but you decided to put this on the front page instead. Where do your priorities lie? And we issued a very strong statement that Rupinder helped me on as well. Jasveer Singh cleared it before it went out. and we were able to get it to the Sun's editorial desk. They won't admit it, but one of the things that we have is that obviously we have journalist contacts, so we can talk to journalists, we can talk off the record to journalists as well. We know for a fact that our statement did come to the attention of the news editor of the Sun, and they were actually quite surprised at our reaction. They didn't think that any Sikh body or institution would respond to it, because again, a small minority in the country, they feel like it's very easy. It's not like they're attacking Theresa May and she's got a load of spin doctors and the sort of number 10 set up to respond. But what we demonstrated to the tabloid press and to a very infamous newspaper is that we are here, and that if you do this sort of journalism, which some might say gutter journalism, whatever you want to call it, but if you do this sort of journalism, we are here, we're looking at it, and we are ready to respond. So that was quite pleasing from our perspective, that, you know, at the end of the day, we couldn't print this story. It was an exclusive. It was on the front page. The first we knew about it was the first anybody else knew about it. But again, within hours, by lunchtime, we had the statement prepared, and the Sun's editor knew about it before the end of that day. And for us, that's a way in which we can help mitigate these, and we can actually influence the behavior of journalists going forward. So it's one of those where, okay, this is a lesson learned, not just for us, and that actually we can respond quite hard. There's a Punjabi phrase, "It da jawab patthar," that I only learned yesterday, which comes to mind when thinking about this. But also, it was a lesson for journalists as well, that if you are going to cover this, and, you know, some editors in tabloid newspaper, that they think they can get a very cheap story out of our community, that they aren't going to succeed, and that we are going to make it harder for them.
Moving forward now on to other things the Sikh Press Association do. So something that we've done for the last 2 years that has proved very popular is set up discussion forums on Sikh issues. So prior to last year, we covered media, perception of Khalistan, we covered mental health, and a couple of others that off the top of my head I can't quite remember. But in the last 12 months, we've arranged 2, which by our kind of our own expectations was less than we wanted. But it is quite difficult to ensure that the correct panelists, a venue and ourselves are all available on the same day to be in one location for 3 hours in the evening. So, you know, that's something that we need continual support on for things like venues and even topics. Come forward with topics and people that you think would be appropriate for those topics. But we can give you guys an exclusive and let you know about our next one. So on May 30th, we will be discussing gender equality in the Sikh community. Our first 3 panelists have already been confirmed. That's Ashmeet Kaur, poet and activist, Manjit Kaur, the founder and head of the Binti Project, and our very own Rupinder Kaur, who's the co-founder of the Sikh Press Association. So that's May 30th, and Imperial College will be putting out information about it, hopefully tomorrow. So speaking of gender equality in the community, we're going to introduce our next speaker now. And without further ado, Neelam Kaur.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Thank you everyone for coming today. I'm really very proud to be here for a number of reasons, but I think the main one, which is something that I've said to both Suk and Jazz, is I've had a very different background from most of the panellists. I had a very traumatic experience when I was younger, which led to me being very disconnected from Sikhi, and I was very angry for a long time. This experience led to me having many gynae issues and reproductive health issues, and unfortunately this story is hidden behind closed doors, and a lot of women have these stories, these journeys, but they've got no safe space to talk about it. So I set up Sisters, named after a very big ovarian cyst which burst while I was in university, leading me to go to hospital. Sisters is to challenge the narrative around womanhood by creating a sisterhood of women with similar issues, with similar goals, and tackling the challenges around things like infertility, mental health, things like postpartum depression, PMDD, which is premenstrual dysphoric disorder. It affects 1 in 20 women, and it creates suicidal ideation, which not many women know about and is underreported in the UK because not many people know about it. And we don't take these issues seriously. So when I first started talking about these issues, obviously there is a big umbrella with reproductive health, reproductive wellness, and that encompasses a subject that we do not like to talk about in public, which is sex. Because I was a young Asian girl talking about sex, all the media coverage around me was very negative. It was very, Asian girl talks about sex, Asian girl talks about body. And it was very sensationalized. It made me feel very guilty for talking about it, but it was the only way that I could get any sort of coverage about the work I was doing. But it made sisters look very provocative, and it made the work that we did very belittled. We have a membership of over 1,000 women, and that's just in the Midlands alone. Our membership is growing across the UK, with Manchester and Birmingham now included with that. So when Sikh and Jazz reached out to me with some of the work that we were doing, it was nice to finally reclaim a narrative for myself of the work that we actually do. We work with women that have cervical cancer, PCOS, endometriosis, which are some of the conditions I have. And to have these conditions sexualised by British media just for a story is very difficult, and it's very difficult for women that are going through these issues as well. Now, there's members of the community which don't like the work that I do because they find it too sexualised. They do not want to listen to an open dialogue around these conversations. So, as Sikh and Jazz both know, and I think a few of the panellists know, I get trolled heavily, and it got to the point where at the end of last year, before I had my operation, I was at a stage where I was thinking to leave Sisters and let somebody else take over because I couldn't physically deal with getting told that I'm not good enough to do this, that if I go to certain temples, that I'm not allowed in there. I've never actually been told I'm not allowed in a temple before, in a Gurdwara before, and that really hurt me because that's my home as well. Why am I not allowed in a Gurdwara? And that was really difficult for me to take, especially because we were working with the NHS on a campaign around cervical smears, but they felt that was a really sexualised topic. Cervical smears wasn't something they wanted to discuss. So through anonymous accounts, letters to my workplace, tagging Sikh PA in tweets about me, I was subjected to nearly 8 months of continuous trolling, and which unfortunately is still ongoing now. And this is one of the reasons I was a bit reluctant to speak today, because I also know that I will get something off the back of this. And I've already almost had to warn Jess and Suk because I'm really worried about what is going to be said about me, what is going to be said about Sisters, because we are not a provocative organisation. We're simply talking about issues that affect 1 in 2 women in the UK. That is half the women in this room already. And I know there's some women in this room have already contacted me about their issues, about fertility issues, but there's men in this room who've contacted me about similar issues. We should have safe spaces for these women. It shouldn't be a sexualised conversation because it is not a sexualised conversation. It is not about sex. It is about female reproductive health, and it's something that we should all be able to talk about, especially with the amount of people that suffer with these conditions. And going on from what Sharanjit was saying about the roles that Jess and Suk have, I think both of them have counselled me at some point, because I think I've cried to both of you down the phone, because I have been trolled that much that I wasn't sure where to turn to. I didn't feel that the Sikh community accepted my work. If you're being told you can't go into a Gurdwara, that's very hard for you to take, and I haven't really got anyone to stand up and say, actually what Neelam is doing is right. And then Sikh PA came along and said, actually, it is right. There is nothing wrong, there is nothing shameful in what you're doing, that you're talking about your experiences, because on average women with my conditions take 7.5 years to get diagnosed, and that is usually through surgeries like a laparoscopy. They're not easy surgeries to go through on your own. You'll usually have a laparoscopy and then you're out in hospital for 8 weeks, and that's when you start getting better. It's horrible. I would never want a woman to go through what I went through. I had no idea. I was told at 23 that I might need a hysterectomy. Who wants a hysterectomy at 23? It makes no sense, but because I didn't understand my body and no one's ever talked about these subjects, I wasn't sure what to do. Thankfully, I didn't choose a hysterectomy. I still live with endometriosis, but I know other things about my body. I understand it better now, and now I can tell people when they get that diagnosis, when they are being pushed with a hysterectomy, that they don't have to do that. There are alternatives. Unfortunately for the NHS, a hysterectomy is a cheaper option of getting rid of the pain than it is to treat the pain long term and look after somebody. And that is where the problem lies, because there's such a discourse between the NHS and the public, and partly because of the public purse as well. So I know with everything that Sikh and Jazz has done, I have been very worried that I'm not accepted within the community, and a lot of the things that they've done, apart from counselling me through, especially this year because it's been quite difficult for me, has made me feel actually, no, I do belong in this community. I am Sikh. And that was very difficult for me because a lot of the tweets, which I think you may have seen, actually have brought my caste into things, which is something I've not experienced before. I've been told that as a Jamar, I shouldn't be allowed in a Gurdwara anyway. I've been told, which I was speaking to Jess about, not to use my surname anymore because people will know what you are and they don't want you in their Gurdwaras. These are very difficult for me because it's not something I've ever been brought up with. I've never known any of these issues before. So to actually have Sikh PA standing behind me and saying, actually, everything you're doing is correct, it's fine, it's okay, and almost holding my hand, because I feel at the moment I'm getting a lot of hand holding, it's been a very big thing for me, and it's kept sisters going. So not only are you helping me, you're actually helping a massive sisterhood of women who really need each other. It's not just me. They create friendships, bonds between themselves, and they can talk to each other. Because we're a digital platform, it's international. So somebody will be up at 4 o'clock in the morning, someone will be up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and that's the beauty of it. I don't need to physically be there. We do meetings similar to Traki. We do meetings bi-monthly, which are spreading out across the UK now, and we have safe spaces for women wherever they need to be, whether it needs to be in a Gurdwara, a community centre, or a room like this. We have people together. We have jar, we have a lot of cake for some reason, there's always food. And we just want to create that sisterhood of women to challenge the narrative around womanhood. And this is what Sikh PA have helped me be able to do, because in December before my operation, I was very close to letting everything go. So I personally want to thank everything Sikh PA have done, because without them, sisters actually wouldn't exist today. So I actually thank you a lot.
Thank you so much for that, Neelam. And it's just a case of the Sikh Press Association doing what we were designed to do, and that's supporting those within our community leading social reform. Social reform was something that started from Guru Nanak Dev Ji Maharaj, so that's something we'll always support. Moving forward, there's so many other things that we could talk about that we worked on behind the scenes. Here's a few. Something which I personally actually forgot to add on there was continuous, I would like to call it dialogue, but it wasn't dialogue, so I'll call it continuous harassment of Twitter after they had banned a specific website, SikhGenocide84.com, which was a website designed to help members of the Sikh community or any supporters that believe that what happened in 1984 was a Sikh genocide, get in contact with your local MP to have them advocate that position, that what happened in 1984 was a genocide. And Twitter banned that, and we were in constant, we were constantly chasing them up for weeks on end about why they had banned it, and eventually that ban was removed. Someone said that it was put back in place and it's on and off, but it's something that we're trying to keep an eye on and chasing up. But you can read for yourself just a few other things that we worked on behind the scenes, which you probably don't see front facing. Next, I'm going to quickly move on to something which kind of draws a line under the work that we do to kind of help you recognize the value of what we do, in terms of if you went to a media organization and you said, I've got an event, a campaign, and I want it to achieve these things, This is the kind of pricing, on average, depending, you would get. These are roundabout figures that we have consulted with various media professionals on. So you can take them in there. So now I'm just going to quickly go forward, and we're only looking now at the positive news coverage that the Sikh Press Association has facilitated. So that means we're not including anything that we've done, for example, on the Free Jaggi Now campaign around 1984, which is kind of, you know, us dealing with more serious Sikh issues. But this is just specifically positive Sikh news stories which we've pushed into the media. So firstly with Bandi Shor Divas, aka Diwali, if you will, the PR value for this was, you're going to see, comparatively quite low for the things that we've worked on. Largely wise because when it comes to media coverage of Diwali, they're just happy to kind of push everything under the banner of Hindu celebration and, you know, nice pictures of fireworks, and that's it. And where do we step in with this? We have a specific informational web page and guidelines for them to ensure when they talk about Sikhs celebrating Diwali, they mention why Sikhs celebrate Diwali. And that's specifically it. So this is just a couple of examples of coverage that we've helped contain that narrative. There was all different Slough newspapers actually ran with this, thanks to a great event by the guys at Guru Manyo Grant. So just £2,000 for PR value there. Next, Shabil Day. For those that don't know what Shabil Day is, it was an idea of Jagraj Singh to consolidate all of the events that happen around the Shahidi anniversary of Guru Arjan Dev Ji Maharaj. So you're probably used to, or at least in the last few years, because when I was growing up I wasn't used to seeing it, but the serving of cool refreshments around this time of year, which is June, to commemorate the Shahidi of the martyrdom of Guru Arjan Dev Ji. So what we try and do, we try and make or encourage groups to do all of these events on one specific day, just so it gains more media traction. And in 2018, we probably had the most successful Shabil Day yet, with I think we had like at least 14 different events in 5 different countries: France, Malaysia, India, Canada, and the UK. If you Google Shabil Day, you'll see that column there, just loads of coverage. We had radio coverage and even TV coverage for something as simple as handing out free drinks, which was great. The PR value attributed to that from our kind of own estimations is £300,000. And again, remember that includes the organisation of approximately 14 different events, probably loads more to be honest, in 5 different countries. Langar Week is what we are known for. At the start of this, Rupinder said the Sikh Press Association is 5 years old. We are actually 5 years old in the sense that our first ever campaign was in 2014, November, where we did the first ever Langar Week. But we started as a full-time organisation, other than doing kind of events here and there or campaign work here and there, in April 2015. So if you want, we're also 4 years old. That's when I started working full-time for the Sikh Press Association. But we're most known for our work on Langar Week. We had a fantastic 50th anniversary of Langar Week this year. We had TV news coverage 5 days out of 7, countless news articles. The amount of time on radio is really hard to calculate, because that would mean going through every single regional radio station that we had coverage on. I mentioned earlier that we have a good relationship with the BBC Religion and Ethics team. They specifically work on Sunday morning content, and we very regularly get platforms across all regional BBC stations. So they'll record an interview and run that over every single BBC regional radio station there is. How many there are, you know what, I couldn't go there. But the PR value attributed to this, we've estimated it at 700,000. I remember when we first started doing this in 2015, somebody from the audience approached me who was actually a public relations professional themselves, and they said Langar Week by itself is probably of the value of a few £1 million in terms of the coverage and the events that are put into it. But this is a conservative estimate. So for Langar Week, we also won an award from the Faith and Belief Forum, whom we work with regularly. Jaspreet Singh mentioned them earlier, and they gave us an award for a community award for our work in Langar Week and highlighting the work in London of Langar Seva groups like Nishkam Swat, for example. Vaisakhi, so with Vaisakhi, is one of the first kind of tasks we were given as a full-time organisation was to ensure that the narrative of Vaisakhi is corrected, that media are no longer talking about it as a Sikh Harvest Festival or Sikh New Year, both of which are inaccurate, and they're actually talking about the creation of the Khalsa as the reason Sikhs are celebrating. We actually did this event, our annual review, last year, I think 2 days after Vaisakhi. So I'm including some of the work that went after that event, so in April last year and this year as well. So we had a lot of good coverage. We had TV news coverage on 3 or 4 different channels. You can see a Huffington Post article there in the corner, which we've now got a regular blog on. When I was spending time out in Canada, this is something I managed to kind of help put together with the Huffington Post Canada team out there. Radio coverage, there's an independent newspaper article which featured us, and lots of regional newspaper coverage. One thing about what we do with Vaisakhi, which is hard to quantify, is the fact that we really go all out, and we did this year because last year was quite a poor year for the narrative around Vaisakhi. The Times newspaper, they actually twice ran 2 different articles saying that Vaisakhi was the Sikh New Year, and that's after, when they did it the first time, which was on the front page of the newspaper, we contacted them, had a long back and forth about the mistake they made, which they weren't willing to admit was a mistake because the mistake is so common that they just pointed out several different examples of the mistake and said, well, actually, what about this? What about that? But so this year we actually were a bit more, I think the right word for it is aggressive in approaching media and public figures in how they classify Vaisakhi, the terms they're using. And we had a lot of good results, but it's hard to quantify how many actually picked up when we're reaching out to media from California to New York to anywhere there's Vaisakhi events happening. We really went all out. So this, again, I would definitely say is a conservative estimate of how far our reach went when it came to correcting the narrative around Vaisakhi. Again, other positive news stories. I mean, what you're seeing here, I would say 10%, 15, 20% of kind of the coverage that we facilitated, especially in the sense that you might see one story here, like let's say, for example, the Simran Kaur interview. So Simran Kaur is one of the most successful amateur boxers in the UK today, and she's a Kaur, of course, and she openly says that kind of, her Sikh background inspires her in what she does. And that one news story that we've got pictured here, that would actually be carried by the BBC elsewhere across the board, to the extent of which kind of we can't even keep up with. We can't tune into every regional radio station to see where the interview ran. But for Women's Day, that was one of the biggest interviews that they ran with. So this is just an example of other news stories, more positive news stories again, and again. So looking at like approximately 20 minutes of TV news coverage, radio coverage into the hours, newspaper columns that could fill up like 2 or 3 newspapers. We're looking at the PR value of obtaining that kind of positive news coverage in the range of £1 million. So overall, adding them all up, positive PR value is £2.35 million for this year, rounding down actually, and that's approximately £200,000 on top of what our estimates were last year. In terms of Sikh Press Association expenditure, you're largely looking at the wages of myself and Sukh, and on top of that, time used for the work of the Everything's 13 full-time staff, like our video editors, like our designers who actually do so much work for us to be able to allow us to show you everything that we've just shown you. So if you go to our YouTube page, if you go through our social media channels, you'll see a never-ending stream of coverage that we've facilitated, and we're only able to show you that because of the work that they do. So all of that is approximately like £65,000 worth of what goes into the Sikh Press Association for an output of £2.3 million worth of positive PR. And again, for anyone that wants to look into that, just look at our YouTube page, look at our social media channels, and you'll see all of the coverage kind of that we've obtained. Happy to discuss this further, but before we move forward now onto our final speaker, quick anecdote. So it would probably be better for Suk to say this anecdote, but I'll just go through it anyway. So Suk and our final speaker were on the radio together on BBC Radio London. I think it was at the week before Langar Week, if I remember correctly, talking about Langar Week's coming up. This is what Langar Week is about. After the end of the interview, when they left the studio, one of the seniors of BBC London TV News came racing down to meet them and was like, wow, I just heard you talking about Langar, and you know what, tell us what events you're having in London, we're going to cover it, we want to cover this. The way you talked about it was amazing, and for us that really shows the benefit of kind of having speakers like our next speaker get the platforms where we're allowed to talk about kind of, you know, Sikh stories or Sikhi as a faith itself. So I'm introducing our next speaker is Amandeep Singh, Sikh educator.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. It's an honour and a privilege to be here to speak with you about something which I'm very, very passionate and very excited about for the future, and that is the work that the Sikh Press Association is undertaking. And an example I'd like to bring you to first of all is the work that's been undertaken as regards amateur boxing. So most of you, like myself, will have grown up in an era where boxing for amateur boxers was not a path that Sikhs could consider. I remember going to my local boxing gym with friends of mine and being told by the boxing coach that you can come here and train, but there's not going to be much of a future here for you because you're going to grow beards. My best friend at the time was an Amritdhari Singh. At that time I was a Monna, but he said, look, you're not going to be able to fight, so there's no point moving forward with this. In 2010, some political activists and, should we say, influential people in the community tried to challenge this. They tried to challenge it with the threat of legal proceedings and the threat of political repercussions if the ban was not lifted. But those efforts, though valiantly made, didn't achieve any results. Nothing was overcome. So the political and the legal means, if you like, they'd been exhausted. 4 years ago, the Sikh Press Association is inaugurated under the guidance of my older brother Jagraj Singh. And Jazz phones me up in 2018. He goes, listen, we're going to have another crack at this. We're going to have another go at this. We're going to see what we can do. And dealing with it in the consummate professional way that they do, they put together a team of physios, a team of doctors, legal professionals, and they put together a package and they sent that to the All England, the Amateur Boxing Association of England, the ABAE, who had previously refused, who had previously sort of knocked back the suggestion that the ban should be lifted. I was very fortunate and very privileged to be part of that team when they were putting it together, so I first-hand witnessed the work that the Sikh Press Association did. And upon writing to them in such a professional way, with all of the backing of all of the medical professionals and the legal team that were there, they received a very prompt response that they were going to look at this and that the ban would be lifted. My friends, in 2019, in February, we celebrated the first amateur Sikh, Amritdhari Sikh fighting. And they fought because the ban had been lifted, because of the work that had been undertaken by the Sikh Press Association. He was able to fight, not for very long. It was a first round knockout for him. He did very, very well. First round, first minute, I might add. And you know, we're looking at roads into the Olympics for amateur boxers, for Sikhs on the world stage. And I think it's really, really important that we just look at this for a second. We can say that the Sikh Press Association overturned the ban of bearded Sikhs fighting in amateur boxing, or we can look at it
going back 10 years earlier and say that they achieved previously that which had already been tried and failed. You see, we live in a changing world. We live in a world where the legal ramifications aren't so concerning or worrying as the media ramifications. We live in a world where people are more scared about what the media are going to do by way of response than political people. And so it's all the point made by this is that the media were able to achieve a turnaround where legal and political activists had failed in the past. Not to say or to undermine the efforts that they did, but the truth of the matter is where the Sikh Press Association succeeded was where previously we'd failed. And so it becomes all the more illustrative of the need to back our press association. I think that when I've previously spoken to Pinda, the Jewish Press Association was formed, I think, about 40 years ago.
1947.
1947, for obvious reasons. And we're sort of just about getting together now, and we're seeing the massive effects that is happening. So one of the correspondences that was sent, it was something along the lines of, if you don't consider our requests reasonable and you're not going to lift this ban, then just let us know your press contacts details, because we're going to go to the press with this, so we just want a comment from you because we're going to go to the media. And that was one of the last paragraphs that was sent over, and immediately they came and said, no, Mr. Singh, Jazz, we'll have none of that. Please, let's have a little sit down, but we'll tell you right now we're going to try and lift this ban. And so we have amateur boxers that are coming through the ranks right now, and I'm really, as I said at the beginning, I'm really passionate and excited to see what further fruits are going to be born out of these seeds that have been planted from the hard work of the Sikh Press Association. So myself, I'm really passionate about Sikh education. Sikh education has changed my life, and it's something I'm really passionate about bringing to other people. And a lot of Sikh organisations are doing a cracking job about teaching Sikhs about Sikhi. But my brother Jagraj would always talk about how we're missing out on the 98%. How we are very good at talking to our children, maybe at the Gurdwara, at Punjabi school, how we're very good at speaking to our own Ladivar Katha, our regular Katha programs and discourses across the country, but we're not very good at communicating who we are to other people. And as Shuranjit said, that if we don't take control of that narrative, then others are going to write it for us. And so what the Sikh Press Association are doing is something that I couldn't first get my head around. They are representing Sikhs to the entire world. And it's really important, because if we're going to grow as a Panth into that world and do what the mandate that has been given to us by Guru Gobind Singh Ji, which is to basically serve the entire world, to save the world in the Khalsa Panth, then the world needs to know who we are, that we're not strangers, that we're not here to do anything but to bring light forth in the way that Langar does, in the way that Shabil does, to the entire world. And insofar as the world doesn't understand who we are, they will continue to come up to us at Trafalgar Square as we serve Langar and say Salam Alaikum, because they don't know who we are. They think that we're Muslims. And it happens to us on a regular basis as we do Langar Seva on the streets of London town, week in, week out. And we have to just smile, grit our teeth and say, obviously this man means well, and reply that I'm not a Sikh, and have the same conversation over and over again. But I think that whilst organisations, which I'm very passionate about, like Basics of Sikhi, Sikh to Inspire, are doing a fantastic job educating Sikhs about Sikhi, we need to empower the Sikh Press Association to tell everybody else in the entire world, the other 98%, if you like, about who we really are. And this is something which has been undertaken not just in theory but in practice. So through the Sikh Press Association, I've been given many contacts, been introduced to many people, and I've been put forward to undertake many seva opportunities, many speaking opportunities for BBC across the country, Manchester, Leicester, Surrey, Shropshire, Derby, Nottingham, Northampton, to name a few. Perhaps most importantly to me, being a London boy, BBC London, where we had 500,000 listening to us as we talked to them about what the Saki is. And that to me is really important. People come up to me and they say, hey, we heard you speaking on the radio, and people at our workplace were talking about what you were saying. And that for me is going to be something which is very important, because as a friend of mine once put it, that if we don't educate people about who we are, when a Sikh turns up in the waiting room with a CV asking for a job, they're not going to be distinguished. If we don't start educating people about who we are through the proper medium, which is the media, as properly illustrated by the boxing analogy, if we don't start educating people about who we are, then we're not going to give the generation below or even ourselves a chance to flourish. and move forward. Just to make the point really poignant, I met a counsellor at Gurma's Gurdwara, which is my local Gurdwara in East London. And so I didn't meet them, I heard this story from a friend of mine. And he said, the counsellor came to the Gurdwara, he goes, I remember you guys, I came here 20 years ago, you gave me aloo gobi. You're good guys, you guys are good people. He was a counsellor. The point to be made was where he had been educated, where he had that chance opportunity to find out about who we were, he remembered it. People remember if we take the chance to go out and just give them, if we take the opportunity to educate them. And what we've got to do is see what people like Jagraj, Jazz, Sukh, Rapinder are doing and understand that it's really, really important that we back them. And if we are not backing the Sikh Press Association, if we're not appreciating the work that they're doing, then we can blame no one else but ourselves when someone else takes up the mantle and starts writing our history and our present for us. So I've spoken a bit about how the media through the Sikh Press Association has achieved where political and legal avenues had failed. I've given a couple of illustrations about how I've been given personally a platform to speak through the BBC, to the BBC, again through the support and the introduction by the BBC. But on a personal note, I'd just like to say something. People think that all speakers, that when they go out, that they've come out of the room as speakers and they know everything that they've got to say. But it's not the case. Actually, I'm actually quite a young speaker in the terms of that I've only started doing Sikh education when I was really influenced by Jagraj a few years ago. And what's really interesting is for Jazz and Sukh, this is not a job for them. This is a passion, this is a lifestyle. And I remember getting one of our first speaking opportunities at BBC and I was a little bit nervous. And Jazz phones me up because, listen, what we're going to do is we're going to have a three-way conference call. It was about 8 o'clock at night the day before, way after the office lights have been turned off and the shutters have been pulled down. And he said, listen, we're going to go through every opportunity. We're going to talk about the options that they're going to pose to you, the questions. And it really felt like I was being handled. It really felt like I was being nurtured as a team. And you can't buy that kind of love. You can't buy that kind of dedication and commitment. You can give someone a salary, but you can't give them heart. And I know these guys, and they're like brothers to me. And we're very, very fortunate to have people that care about the Panth, not just their job and their role. And I say it again, you can buy people. You can give them salaries. You can't buy heart. And if you phone these guys, as I've already illustrated, it's 4 in the morning, 6 in the morning, their phones are blowing up. It's not call me back later when my working shift contract kicks in. It's about what does the Panth need right now and how can I serve? And on that final point, oftentimes at work, I'll turn my nose up at tasks that I don't want to do. But you'll see Jazz and you'll see Sukh. You'll see them deal with people perhaps that they don't want to deal with, that are not looking at Sikhi with a favourable eye. They've got to pick up the dirt sometimes so it doesn't get thrown on our face. And they do a fantastic job at doing that. And it's not so easy it's easy to say, but not so easy to do. To actually stand in the way and go, look, I don't want to do this, but for the better of the Panth, I'm going to do it. You know, it's an easy punchline to throw out there, but to live that life, and I phoned Jazz and he's like, yeah, I know, man, but what are you going to do? I know people are going to shower us for this, but it's got to be done. I know it's not going to be a pleasant situation, but I've got to stick through it because otherwise this will happen and so will have a conflict. And I regularly have these conversations, so genuinely from the bottom of my heart, genuinely, I'm very, very, very appreciative of the work that you've done for the Panth. I'm really excited to see the way that you're going to portray and put forward and tackle the issues that no doubt are going to be thrown at us. So genuinely from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for the work that you do. Thank you for the platform that you've given me and for the wonderful, wonderful, powerful, influential work that you do for the Panth. So, Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Vaheguru, that was beautiful. Amandeep Singh, I will say as well, has been a real rock, especially to me personally, since Bhai Jagraj Singh passed, which leaves us sometimes with a gap of kind of like a shield with the hard things that we deal with. Also, in regards to the boxing, the Sikh Press Association definitely can't take all the credit. Lions MMA, an absolutely fantastic organisation that have martial arts and boxing clubs across the UK aimed at the Sikh community, but for everyone. They're the ones who brought the issue to the fore. Karam Singh put himself forward as a case study. He was a young amateur boxer coming up, and he also had high-level organisations like Buddha Dal interact with the England Boxing Association. Dr. Harbir Singh put his medical credentials on the line to say that the beard is in no way at all a health hazard in the sport of boxing, and I hope anyone else that's been left out forgives me, but the Sikh Press Association definitely can't take all the credit. And actually, to add, a lot of those emails that we were sending, in fact all of them, were tweaked by Amandeep Singh, who's a lawyer by trade, so he knew how to kind of use his words wisely to put the pressure on, shall I say. What next for the Sikh Press Association? So we need to start planning now for the long term, and I mean the really long term, to ensure that Sikh Press Association is here. Like we said earlier, the Jewish Press Association, which is based in the USA, has been around since 1947. The Sikh Press Association wants to be around for the long-term future as well, and what we're looking to do is set some real structure for that. In the handouts you've received, you'll see us talking about an editorial policy. So for everything that we've learned, if we created an editorial policy before we started our work, we'd be amending it every week. So now, after 4 years approximately of recognizing, what this job entails and what it entails for us as an organization, we're putting that in place, and we're looking to kind of develop and grow. We're working with, I think I saw him come in, Dr. Jasjit Singh, on a Sikhs in Media academic research project. We've worked with quite a few academics on helping them with their research, as Sharanjit mentioned, with the GLAD study being one, for example. A complete website revamp. Those of you who came here last year would have read that before, but there are many failings of the Sikh Press Association, and keeping care of our website is definitely one of them, and specifically growing the team. So the Sikh Press Association is really going to be looking to go out and connect with Sikh organizations and Sangat, and actually grow, because for a long time we only had one person that was running full time, and now it's two, and even with two people we see that, from my perspective, I think the minimum an organization like this, for it to achieve its full aims and capabilities, needs to be at least 4 people deep. So we're going to be having some serious conversations about growing. Now on to, in regards to growing, the most basic way you can help is through funding. If you look in the handouts you received, you have this funding leaflet. We're under the banner of Everything's 13, well known for the work that they do with basics of Sikhi, and that's where our funding comes from, so that's one way you can help. But now with this in the background, it's time for you guys to ask any questions you may have. Rupinder, Sukh, if you could join me. Guys, if you have any questions, we can hand out these mics, I think, yeah. So anyone, any questions?
Hi, I'm also Amandeep Singh. Firstly, thanks a lot for presenting and showcasing the wonderful work the Sikh PA does. It's been truly inspirational, especially learning the non-frontline work you've been involved with, such as Tarakki, and hearing about the work with Neelam and sisters, and also listening to yourself, Amandeep. So that's been really inspirational. What I would say is that until a few days ago, when my wife asked me if I was interested in going to a Sikh PA event, my first question to her was, what is that? So as an organisation, you really rely on the awareness of yourselves, not just with your media contacts, but also fundamentally with the Sikhs you represent, to help feed your knowledge and the network of contacts you have across the globe. And unfortunately also seeing the room not as full as I would have expected, that sort of made me feel like that as well. So my question is mainly, what can be done further to further your presence, that all Sikhs all over the world are actually aware of your existence, so they can support yourself as much as you can get support from them. Because what's excited me today is actually seeing the massive contribution the very few number of people have actually done, such as yourself, Sukh, and others as well. So what I'm really excited about is, as you expand, clearly that figure speaks for itself. As you expand, that is only going to exponentially increase. So that the question, really is, how do you feel like, so if you're going to increase your awareness in the Sikh community?
In regards to kind of our own profile, one of the reasons why we're kind of perhaps not as well known as a lot of the other organizations is because a lot of what we do is behind the scenes. Other than our social media, our interaction with the average Punjabi Sikh only comes through Sangat organizations. So the organizations that we work with, that's our interaction with the general Sikh public and the Sikh community. So in one sense, perhaps kind of, we could build on those relationships with those organizations, the countless organizations that we work with, to help them push out our profile. On another hand, I remember Jagraj Singh answering this question when we were out in Canada, and somebody brought up a specific Sikh news page that they weren't too happy with because they felt that they were constantly putting out kind of inflammatory articles that were a bit sensationalist, which was for news directed at the community, for the Sikh community. And Jagraj said, what you're doing now is comparing the Sun to the Associated Press. How many people have heard of the Associated Press? Probably about a third or quarter, maybe less. So the Associated Press are a news agency, which is what we are. So we're not like a direct media outlet. We're kind of a facilitator more than a direct outlet. So we're always going to be kind of slightly behind the scenes. We're not the ones doing the interviews, we're the ones arranging the interviews, most of the time anyway. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of work that we have to do in terms of building our profile to ensure that we kind of, are able to grow and are able to get the interaction with the Sangat. I would love this room to be full as well. And one of the funny things is when you do free events, you'll have 150 people register and 40 people turn up, which is the case of all our events. So, we've discussed previously about charging and, we've thought against it. But, these are things we have to reconsider. But largely in answer to your question, we have work to do in terms of maybe connecting more with our Sangat-led organizations and probably building on the back of their popularity. So one thing that was mentioned was media workshops. I'd like more of the Bantik organizations, whether they're based on serving langar or whether they're more activists, to actually call us in to do media workshops for them, so their Sangat knows about what we do, and also kind of, their people know about what we do. But to a large extent, just to repeat myself, we are going to be behind the scenes because we're a news agency, not a news outlet.
It'll be a good idea if everyone here as well, the first free thing you can do is share and like every social media page that Sikh Press Association has, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and also maybe share the content. That's a big step in itself.
Thank you. Yeah, that's very true. Sometimes, I just get so caught up in kind of, just doing the work that we do that we forget about building our own profile. So that's the senior video editor of the Everything's 13 speaking. So yeah, let's take that on board. He knows a lot about social media. So that's how you guys can help.
It's one thing that you said there, Jazz.
Yep, please do.
So I'm slowly learning about this whole media thing, trying to be doing more speaking and taking more speaking opportunities to talk about Sikhi. And when I first met Rupinder, I was like, I don't know why we need a Sikh Press Association. We've got the Sikh channel. Because I just didn't understand what the Sikh Press Association would do. We have a Sikh channel. Anything that we want the Sikhs to know about, we could just advertise it on Sikh channel, right? But it's not. So in essence, my understanding, and Jazz will correct me if I'm wrong, the number of people in attendance in this room is not a reflection of the success of the Sikh PA. The number of people in attendance at any of the events that they have helped facilitate, for example, one of the talks that I did on BBC had 500,000 views. That's a reflection of the success of the Sikh Press Association, because they would be working with organisations, and if that makes any sense. So it's a number of people that attend the events that they facilitate is really a reflection of their success, and how much that increases. That's really how we should be judging the Sikh Press Association's success.
No, sorry, just to go back, that was not criticism.
No, we know
clearly.
No, I was just clarifying. I had the same issues in my head. Why do we need...
I totally get your point about being behind the scenes as an organisation, but it was more the more of us know about it, I think it's more of us feeding into your pool of we're running this kind of thing. Oh, let's call up the Sikh PA. They can sort of organise the media around that. So you have more people. that are coming back to you?
I would like to think that the vast majority of Sikh organisations, Bantik-led organisations, do know about us in that sense. So I guess, it's kind of filtering out from that circle that we're working in to maybe the individuals that would be doing their own thing as well. Yeah, another question.
Vaigu Ka Khalsa,
Vaigu Ka Khalsa. I'm sorry, if it's okay. Oh, sorry, there you are, the front. I'm looking. Do you mind standing up so they can capture you in all your glory?
My name is Manveer Singh from the Sikh Network. Just wanted to second a lot of views in the room and, obviously acknowledge the extensive work that you have done in the past year, certainly in respect of a lot of the campaigns that the Sikh Network and the Sikh Federation have been involved in. I think your contributions are, second to none with regards to those things. Just to get a further feel, what are the biggest challenges you face on a day-to-day basis, and what do you feel will be your biggest challenge going forward over the next, 2 to 5 years?
That's a very good question. For us, I think the biggest challenge is we're not in control of our work. We're not in control of our workload. This is a great example of me waking up and thinking it's going to be a slow news day. There's not much in the diary. I've got a few things to do, but not much. And then this happens. And it was the same day as the Grenfell Tower fire as well. I woke up and we actually had a clear diary that day. We had a few things to get on with. And then that happened, and that's our whole week afterwards taken out. And planning, especially with our limited resources, being able to plan, we plan our yearly events, whether it's Chabil Day, Langar Week. These take a lot of planning beforehand. They take a lot of planning that has to happen regardless of what else is happening. And I think something that Jasveer Singh and I face on a day-to-day basis is this juggling, because we want to do the stuff that's in the diary, that is structured, that is going to be more longer term, but at the same time, if we're not there doing what you could call the firefighting or the more reactive stuff, or sometimes organizations drop a press release on us and they'll say, actually this event is happening in 2 days time, or even tomorrow sometimes, and obviously then that becomes a priority, and every single day things are taking priority that you didn't even know about yesterday. And there's always stuff coming up within the community. Sometimes a journalist might get in touch with a request that, again, has come out of nowhere. And something that I think a lot of people don't see is the amount of time we spend on really credible media projects that go all the way almost to like 11 o'clock and then fall at the last hurdle because of something or another. Very blameless. Sometimes it's nobody's fault. Sometimes it's just the whim of the editor, whatever it could be, that we work really hard on a project. We take it right up to almost publication, and then nature of media, it just, it gets dropped. It doesn't happen. So again, there's a lot of these things behind the scenes for us that we have to manage. We have to plan for, we have to juggle, and there's 2 of us. And again, we try to go to Sangat events, Sangat organisations. Again, today I was in Parliament for the Westminster Hall debate contribution to UK6, because again, we think it's important for us to be there. At the same time, we face both ways. So as much effort as we need to put into connecting with Sangat, we also need to do that with the mainstream media. We're talking about online media, radio, TV, newspapers. We could spend we could have so many people just focusing on client relationships on the media side, let alone on the Bantik side. And then that's not even taking into account actually doing the work. And Jasveer Singh and I, we do have to make those judgment calls. And we are dictated by events. And I think that's something that I've learned personally from experience, just when to make those calls and what to juggle when.
Super.
Just add a little bit to that. I think moving forward strategically, one of the key things that we found, not as a failure, but one of the key things that was missing was having a bank and a resource and a library for statistical information that's correct, for studies that people can refer back to, and even the basics of having high resolution press images. So for instance, if you try and look for a high resolution press image of Harmandir Sahib, you'd be hard pressed to find something like that. So that's something that we've always wanted to do, but as just Sukh was saying, priorities change order. So I think in a long-term vision, that a bank of information is something that we definitely want to kind of really build on.
Cool. I just want to make a final thank you to Jasveer Singh for the hand-holding he's given me on various media opportunities I've had. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Briji. Definitely don't need hand-holding. Great interview. Just to add to that, in terms of the long-term future of the Sikh Press Association, one thing that kind of becomes evident at certain points when we're looking for kind of a Sikh perspective on things is that there needs to be more organization and more dialogue between Sikh organizations themselves. So we don't all have to always agree, definitely, that's impossible. But as long as we're all understanding of a certain position, we will avoid the kind of conflict which makes the Sikh Press Association look like we're championing a biased viewpoint. I'll give you an example. The Independent article which ran a line about Vaisakhi being the creation of the Khalsa and the celebration of the creation of the Khalsa led with that statement saying, according to the Sikh Press Association, Vaisakhi is not the Sikh New Year. Hopefully everyone in this room knows that that's not according to the Sikh Press Association, it's according to Sikhi. But nevertheless, that is the way they kind of framed it, simply because they had so many other references which said that Vaisakhi is the Sikh New Year, as outdated as they might be. So we need to see more organisation and more dialogue between Sikh organisations as well. Yeah, I think we can one more question and we'll call it. I'm sorry. Oh no, we haven't got time for no more questions. Yeah, you can speak to us as we're leaving. We did say 8:30, and Desi timing. We've overrun already, so let's speak to us. Feel free to speak to us outside as we're leaving. Thank you all for attending. And yeah, I think that's it. I hope, like I said, please do speak to us about anything else afterwards. Thank you so much, guys. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Sat Shri Akal.